Imagine you're a samurai warrior stationed in the mountains of northern Japan. It's winter. The temperature has dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. A blizzard is raging outside. The wind is howling. Snow is piling up against the walls. But inside your dwelling, you're warm, comfortable. Your fingers aren't numb. Your teeth aren't chattering. You're sitting by a fire contemplating the day ahead. How is this possible? How did medieval samurai build homes that could withstand extreme cold? How did they create spaces that remained warm even in the harshest conditions? The answer lies in engineering, in knowledge, in understanding how materials work, in understanding how heat moves, in understanding how to work with nature instead of against it. The samurai earth houses of medieval Japan represent one of the most sophisticated heating systems ever created, and they were built without modern technology, without electricity, without central heating, without any of the conveniences we take for granted today. Let me take you through this journey. Let me show you how these remarkable structures were built. Let me explain the principles that made them work. Let me reveal the engineering secrets that kept samurai warriors warm through brutal Alpine winters. The foundation of a samurai earth house was literally the earth itself. The structure was built partially underground. This was intentional. The earth beneath the surface maintains a relatively constant temperature. Even when the air temperature drops to minus 30 degrees Celsius, the ground temperature remains significantly warmer. This principle is called geothermal stability. The samurai did not have a scientific name for it, but they understood it intuitively. They observed it, they tested it, and they refined it over generations. The excavation process was meticulous. A pit was dug into the hillside. The depth was crucial. It had to be deep enough to reach stable ground temperature, but not so deep that it became impractical to construct. The typical depth was between 1 and 2 meters. This depth provided significant thermal protection. The earth at this depth maintained temperatures between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius even during the harshest winters. The walls of the excavated pit were reinforced with stone, sometimes with clay, and sometimes with wood. Their purpose was to prevent collapse, to prevent water infiltration, and to create a stable structure. Builders worked with precision. Each stone was placed carefully. Each layer was compacted, and the finished wall could withstand extreme pressure from the surrounding earth and the weight of snow above. The roof was the next critical element. It had to be strong enough to support heavy snow loads. It had to be insulated, and it had to allow smoke to escape. The typical roof was constructed from multiple layers. The base layer was wooden beams, strong enough to carry the weight. Above the beams came a layer of clay mixed with straw, which provided insulation and sealed the structure. Above that was a layer of thatch or bark, which shed water and kept rain and snow from penetrating the clay layer. The insulation value of this roof was remarkable. The clay and straw mixture had an R value comparable to modern insulation. The thatch or bark added additional protection. The result was a roof that prevented heat from escaping, and that kept the interior warm even when the exterior temperature plummeted. The entrance to the earth house was designed strategically. It was not a simple opening. It was a tunnel, an airlock. The tunnel was typically several meters long. It descended into the earth. The walls of the tunnel were insulated. They were built from the same materials as the main structure: clay, straw, and stone. The tunnel itself became a thermal barrier. Cold air entering the tunnel would lose much of its coldness before reaching the main living space. This principle is still used in modern architecture. It is called an airlock or thermal vestibule. The samurai developed it centuries before modern science gave it a name. Inside the main living space, the heating system was sophisticated. The central element was the hearth. It was not a simple fireplace, but an engineered system. The hearth sat in the center of the room, allowing heat to radiate in all directions. The fire burned continuously, not wastefully, but consistently, enough to maintain warmth, enough to cook food, and enough to dry clothing. Smoke from the fire did not simply rise and escape. Instead, it was channeled through the walls. Channels were built into the clay walls, and the smoke traveled through these channels before exiting through vents in the roof. As the smoke moved through the channels, it released heat into the surrounding walls. The walls absorbed that heat and became thermal batteries. They stored heat, and they released it gradually. They maintained warmth even when the fire was reduced. The positioning of these smoke channels was calculated precisely. They ran along the perimeter of the living space and ensured heat was distributed evenly. No area of the house was significantly colder than another. This uniformity was important. It prevented people from clustering around the fire, and it allowed the entire space to be used effectively. The materials used for the walls extended beyond just clay. The walls were built from multiple layers. The inner layer was clay mixed with straw, providing insulation and thermal mass. The middle layer was stone, giving structural support. The outer clay layer sealed the structure and prevented water infiltration. Each layer contributed to the overall effectiveness of the system. The floor of the earth house was also engineered. The floor was not simply packed earth. It was elevated slightly above the ground level outside to prevent water from entering during heavy rains or snowmelt. The floor was covered with straw mats or wood, which provided insulation from the cold earth below, added comfort, and created a clean surface for daily living. The windows were minimal. This was not a design flaw. This was intentional. Windows are thermal weak points. They allow heat to escape, and they allow cold to enter. The samurai understood this, so they minimized windows. The few windows that existed were covered with paper or cloth. These materials provided some insulation while still allowing light to enter. During the harshest weather, the windows could be covered completely, sealing the structure thermally. The ventilation system was sophisticated. The living space needed fresh air, but it also needed to retain heat. The solution was strategic vent positioning. Vents were placed high on the walls. Hot air naturally rises, and it exits through the upper vents. As hot air exits, cooler air is drawn in from lower positions. This creates a circulation pattern that refreshes the air while minimizing heat loss. The samurai engineered this circulation to be almost imperceptible. Occupants would not feel drafts, yet the air would remain fresh. The size of the living space was optimized. Larger spaces are harder to heat, and smaller spaces are easier to maintain at comfortable temperatures. The typical samurai earth house was modest in size, often 5 meters by 5 meters. This size was large enough for comfortable living, yet small enough to be heated effectively. The height of the ceiling was also optimized. Lower ceilings meant that heat could not escape upward as easily. The typical ceiling height was between 1.5 meters and 2 meters. This was low enough to retain heat, but high enough for comfortable living. The thermal mass of the structure was significant. The earth surrounding the house, the stone walls, the clay, all of these materials had high thermal mass. They absorbed heat during the day, and they released it gradually during the night. This created a stabilizing effect. The interior temperature remained relatively constant. It did not fluctuate dramatically. That stability was crucial for comfort, and it was crucial for health. The fire management system was disciplined. The fire was never allowed to go out completely. It was kept continuously tended. At the same time, it was not allowed to burn wastefully. The samurai understood how to manage and control fire and how to maximize its heat output. They used wood efficiently, and they knew which types of wood burned best, which burned hottest, and which produced the least smoke. The wood used for fuel was carefully selected. Hardwoods were preferred: oak, ash, and maple. These woods burned hotter and longer than softwoods, so they were gathered and dried during the warmer months. They were stored carefully and protected from moisture. The quality of the fuel directly affected the quality of the heating, and the samurai understood this. They invested in good fuel. The arrangement of furniture and materials inside the earth house was strategic. Heavy items were placed against the walls to help insulate the structure, while lighter items were arranged to allow efficient use of space. Sleeping areas were positioned away from the direct heat of the fire to prevent overheating and to ensure people could sleep comfortably without being too hot. The bedding used in these earth houses was sophisticated. Multiple layers of blankets and furs provided insulation. Sleeping platforms were elevated slightly above the floor to prevent cold coming up from the ground. The result was a warm and comfortable sleeping arrangement, even in extreme cold. Winter clothing was engineered for warmth, with multiple layers, natural fibers, and tight weaves designed to trap air and retain body heat. The combination of the earth house and appropriate clothing meant samurai could remain comfortable even in extreme conditions. The social aspects of living in an earth house were important. Family members and servants shared the space, gathered around the central fire, ate together, worked together, and slept in designated areas. The shared space created warmth, not just from the fire, but from community and shared purpose. Maintenance was ongoing and essential. The roof needed periodic repair. Clay needed to be reapplied. Smoke channels required cleaning, and the structure had to be inspected for damage. This maintenance was performed regularly to extend the life and effectiveness of the house. Construction required significant labor and expertise. It took weeks or months, and it required skilled workers, planning, and resources. The investment was worth it. A well-built earth house could last for decades and provide warmth and shelter through countless harsh winters. The knowledge required to build and maintain these structures was specialized and passed down through generations of builders and craftsmen. That knowledge was valuable and often closely guarded. A samurai lord with access to skilled builders had a significant advantage, able to provide superior shelter that improved morale, health, and combat effectiveness. The earth house represented more than just shelter. It represented engineering knowledge, an understanding of materials and of thermodynamics, and the ability to work with nature to create comfort in harsh conditions. Samurai understood that survival depends on understanding your environment and on using available resources wisely. The comparison to modern homes is striking. Modern houses often have poor insulation, excessive windows, and rely entirely on mechanical heating systems. If those systems fail, people suffer. Samurai earth houses relied on principles, on materials, and on design. They were resilient, reliable, and worked even when other systems failed. The environmental impact of samurai earth houses was minimal. They used local materials, required minimal fuel, and worked with the landscape rather than against it. The samurai understood sustainability intuitively, building structures that could be maintained indefinitely without constant replacement or environmental damage. The psychological impact of living in an earth house during harsh weather was significant. People felt safe, protected. The earth surrounding them provided security. The warmth provided comfort. The stability provided peace. The samurai understood that shelter was more than just physical protection. It was psychological protection. It affected morale, and it affected mental state. It affected the ability to function effectively. The seasonal rhythm of life in an earth house was pronounced. Winter was a time of gathering, of staying close to the fire, of community. Spring brought the opportunity to venture outside, to repair and maintain the structure. Summer was a time of activity, of preparation for the coming winter. Autumn was a time of gathering resources, of preparing fuel, of getting ready for the harsh months ahead. The connection between the earth house and samurai philosophy was profound. The samurai valued discipline, efficiency, and working with nature. The earth house embodied all of these values. It was disciplined in its design. It was efficient in its operation. It worked with natural principles. The structure reflected the philosophy of the people who built it. The knowledge contained in samurai earth houses is relevant today. We face climate challenges. We need to reduce energy consumption and build sustainably. The samurai earth house offers lessons. It shows that comfort and warmth can be achieved without complex systems, without excessive energy consumption, and without harming the environment. It shows that understanding principles is more important than having technology. Modern architects and engineers are rediscovering these principles: passive house design, geothermal heating, thermal mass. These are modern concepts, but they are based on principles that samurai understood centuries ago. The samurai did not have the scientific language, but they had the practical knowledge. They had proven systems that worked. If you could experience living in a samurai earth house during an Alpine blizzard, you would understand something important. You would understand that survival depends on understanding your environment, on working with natural principles, and on making wise use of available resources. You would understand why samurai were so effective, why they were so resilient, and why they could thrive even in harsh conditions. The earth houses represent more than just architecture. They represent a way of thinking, a way of approaching problems, a way of living in harmony with nature. The samurai understood that the best solutions are often the simplest, that working with nature is more effective than fighting against it, that understanding principles is more valuable than having technology. If you found this exploration of samurai engineering fascinating, and you want to learn more about how medieval warriors solved practical problems, please subscribe. Because here at Shinro Way, we explore the engineering knowledge of ancient civilizations. We reveal the practical wisdom that shaped history, and we uncover the solutions that modern people have forgotten. If you want to go deeper and understand not just how these structures were built, but why they were built this way, check out our other videos. We have content on samurai engineering, samurai sustainability, and how ancient knowledge applies to modern problems. Each video reveals another layer of this remarkable culture. Leave a comment below. Tell us what surprised you most about samurai earth houses. Tell us what you think about using natural principles for heating. Tell us what ancient knowledge you think we should rediscover. Your comments help us understand what resonates with our audience, and your engagement helps us create better content. If you really want to support our mission to preserve and share ancient wisdom, consider becoming a channel member. Members get early access to new videos, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes looks at how we research these topics. Members become part of a community of people who are passionate about history, engineering, and sustainability. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being curious about how ancient people solved problems and for caring about understanding the wisdom of the past. Understanding the past helps us solve the problems of the present, and understanding samurai engineering shows that the best solutions are often based on natural principles, on working with our environment, and on making wise use of available resources. Remember, samurai earth houses never froze because they were engineered to work with nature. They used available materials, and they created systems that were resilient and sustainable. That is a lesson we can all learn from. In a world facing climate challenges, the best solutions are often the simplest. Working with nature is more effective than fighting against it. And understanding principles is more valuable than relying on technology alone.